Okay, so we're on chapter 6 of Gaia's Retribution. And this breaks down government, everything. It's an autobiography. I was an MK Ultra like sex slave, but it's basically a slave system that we're dealing with. Um, it explains everything, breaks down conspiracies, breaks down everything. So I'll continue now. Chapter 6. I had one relationship after that where I basically babysat my video gaming boyfriend and paid for everything for him. Bubba got bit by a dog when he was delivering mail one day. He had a foot fetish. He would leave his spunk on my feet every morning while I was in horrible pain and then call me to calm him down for the for hours early in the morning. He was somewhat bit of a bigot and used racial slurs regularly. I tried to correct his behavior thinking that he just needed a good influence, but it didn't work. He just knew better than to use them when I was around. I would talk to him in between his deliveries, even when I had a migraine. He would come to my house after work with beer, pop the caps off in my room, all over the floor, despite me having boxers that ate everything, and play endless video games. He didn't pay attention to me at all. He had no regard for anyone around him, especially not me. Bubba would come back to me later while he was homeless just to utilize me for a place to stay and a person to lay, even though he didn't have sex with me when we were together, but maybe 10 times overall, on an account of a penile injury he sustained as a teen from masturbating too hard. While I was with him, I ended up in the ICU. I had had the flu and was in bed for 2 weeks before I started feeling my body shutting down. I was taking all the medication my doctor had prescribed on top of one another. Bubba called me one of the first nights I was there and screamed at me on the phone while I was so out of breath I couldn't even talk. My brother was there with me, cleaning me off my face and trying to help me feel better. By the end of the 10-day stint, they had told me that I had pinched a valve and almost needed a pacemaker. It had opened itself up while I was there. They had me off all pain medication. I was going through terrible withdrawals while I was there. A neurologist I saw had them resume my normal regimen, and I went home within a day or so of being released from the ICU. Hold on one second. Bubba would go from being a selfish, unpleasant, childlike being to thinking he was some kind of prophet after we broke up, toting around a guitar with Jesus written on it, blocking me from the media when I told him Jesus was a sham and Mary Magdalene was the savior. This was after taking him in for a week out of nowhere. I basically had functioned as his therapist for the better part of the year we had been together and a safe haven for him when he was kicked out of his house. I never got the chance to tell him how I felt about him, but just like everyone else, I'm sure he can't handle it. I was with Bubba the first time I saw a shadow person. I awoke in my room for real to see a dark figure looming at the closed door. It was taller than the doorway, and I called out to Bubba to turn on the light. The figure didn't move at all for a good minute. There was no response until I saw a set of spiky fingers reach over to the light switch. Bubba popped up and knocked over my nightstand. Bubba popped up behind me at that very moment and said my name. I leapt off the bed in fear and knocked over my nightstand. When I looked up, there was a wiry creature crouching at the edge of the bed. It jumped on me and I began hitting its skinny, frail body. I was hitting flesh 1 minute and then the next it was gone. I went right back to sleep as if nothing had happened, but the experience stayed with me. I thought it was his darkness that attracted them at first, but I would come to find out it was actually my good. I eventually found an email he sent to his ex-girlfriend trying to hook up with her, and I think that was enough to make me leave. He had sent it on my laptop and left his email open, and something just told me to check it. I was glad to be rid of him, as I truly couldn't stand him anymore. When it finally ended, I began online dating. I hadn't yet made a profile on Tinder, being that it was a known hookup site and I wasn't looking for that. I mean, I already had herpes. Was I really looking to start an STD harvesting site in my vagina? so I stuck to OkCupid, and I tended to like more average-looking guys just as a preference. My self-esteem wasn't great, but I also wasn't a big fan of really manicured men. Ideally, a lumberjack bearded guy was trump, but difficult to find in the online community. The guys I would normally go for weren't the type of men you would meet on an online dating forum, and I went into it being relatively aware of that from the start. My first date was with a guy named Andrew. He was much shorter than I expected, and he had hid his receding hairline under a cap. He took me to a fair and had the audacity to stare at other women. I never felt so gross, and I knew I shouldn't have gone home. Shouldn't have gone home with him, but I ended up going him. I should have gone home, but I ended up going home with him instead. We slept together, and I made him use a condom because he literally gave me the creeps. But it seemed as though I didn't have the ability to say no. I feel that I was possibly chipped for compliance at some point, or was under some sort of possession, because even if I didn't want to have sex, I would. I personally think people should use condoms all the time because of the fact that you're with all the people that that person has been with before. I didn't know at the time your soul gets intertwined with people you have sex with. I'm not 100% sure it does. Something like that happens. Something with something like that occurs. You're connected to them like for forever, to, you know what I mean, in a telepathic way of some sort. The world was full of you can gain demonic attachments from people just from having sex with them. The world was full of incubi and succubi, incubi and succubi, and many people have demonic attachments they know nothing about. I opened my eyes. I fell asleep there, and I opened my eyes to find a pile of sex toys in my line of vision, and Andrew shoving one of them in my rectum. He climbed on top of me and told me he was taking me to get glory hold. I burst out laughing in his face. I didn't feel fear at what he had just done to me, strangely. I didn't feel anything except a burning butthole. He wanted to have sex with me without a condom, and I said, "What if you have something?" To which he responded, "Then you'll have it and you'll be mine, so it won't matter." That made my blood run cold. He proceeded to wrap his legs around my head and rape my face. He went soft really fast, as I didn't struggle. I basically went into a mini coma of sorts. It felt like an out-of-body experience, as if I was floating above myself, as if it wasn't me happening to me at all. After about 20 seconds, he stopped, left out a shirt for me, and went to cook dinner. I was exhausted and desperately needed my next oxy dosage. I felt a cold sweat come over me as I stumbled into the shower and barely able to walk from the reverberating pain in my legs. I was in so much pain that I didn't have the emotional availability to even address what had happened. My anus was on fire, so I sat in the shower for as long as I needed to and tried to figure out what else I was going to do and come out of shock. I put the shirt on and nothing else, leaving my whole bottom exposed so he wouldn't think I was leaving. I didn't think to put my bodysuit on underneath it. I just figured if I look sexual and like I'm down, maybe he will let me leave to get my medication at some point. I proceeded to do various stretches half naked to keep my body from cramping up. I was in full-blown oxy withdrawals from the 60 milligrams I had taken the night before, and I had slept half the day away there. I felt like I was dying. He had me sit down to eat, and I ate nothing. I tried but couldn't bear to swallow anything. I went and sat down on the couch and mentioned me leaving to get my medicine, to which he replied, "You're fine." I explained, "If maybe you had a child with my condition, you would understand how painful it is." He rushed over to me and grabbed my arm, pulled it nearly out of the socket to throw me out of his apartment for even making a parallel like that. My body immediately responded into a flaming burst. I checked him up against the wall so hard he bounced. I was startled by my own strength. I hesitated. He came at me with both hands out, reconvening with each other on my throat. He choked me and then threw me up against the wall. I fell into a pile of Katie. Just felt my body tumble to the floor before I blacked out. I woke up with a ringing pain in my arm to him staring at me crumpled up on the carpet. He began to laugh. "You're feisty like my ex-wife," he said. I popped up and grabbed his phone and said, "I'm calling the cops," and dipped out as fast as I could. I think I caught him by surprise because I wasn't dressed. It was an immediate response, and he didn't get up to try and stop me. I rushed to the center of the parking lot and began screaming out after dialing 911. Strangely, I don't remember anyone trying to keep me on the line at all. Nobody so much as stuck their head out the window. The entire scenario reminded me of the Kitty Genovese murder case. She was murdered outside in the street screaming for help. There was an insane number of witnesses who just imagined that someone else was calling the police about the incident, so they didn't have to. She was stabbed and then left in the middle of the street, and when no one called the police, the assailant actually came back to finish her off. This is known as diffusion of responsibility. There was one black man walking his dog outside, and it was as if I could hear his thoughts in my head. I'm not going anywhere near that half-naked white lady. Suddenly I felt the need to turn and look, and I saw a massive orange blur coming at me. I began screaming at the top of my lungs for help, and again nothing, but it was enough to scare him away. I, to this day, believe he intended on kidnapping and sex trafficking me. A blonde female police officer came out to get my statement 55 minutes after my call, and I was so upset at that point I could barely hold it together. I was naked from the waist down. I could feel the summer breeze between my labia as I walked, and it was so dehumanizing. I'd imagine that they'd have had a blanket. I began telling her that he strangled me and threw me up against a wall. She acknowledged that it was attempted murder, and whilst I was trying to irk out my statement, she asked me if my car was there. I had been holding my handbag the whole time and didn't even realize it. I couldn't even tell you when I had grabbed it because I felt as if there was a cloud hanging in and around my head. I felt as if my memory had been wiped completely and I was having trouble finding the words to say anymore. I mean, I had just been knocked unconscious. I had my keys in my handbag the entire time. The officer began asking about what his car was. I didn't know why they were asking me. I was being questioned about something irrelevant to the situation. This led to them going to his apartment. They knocked on the door, and because he turned the lights off and didn't answer, they were done. They told me I would have to report the incident again at the police station and offered me a ride to the hospital. I was so disgusted with the entire situation, I simply refused to go. I had anal trauma and so much more to tell them, but my mind was just now filled with rage where it had been a blank state just a moment before. I just left and drove home. My sore asshole found comfort in the soft seat of my Honda, and I went upstairs and went to sleep. I later found out the average response time for police is 16 minutes and 12 seconds after calling 911. I spent the better part of 10 years tracking him to know whereabouts he was. Just to keep myself comfortable and to know where not to go. I tried dating the same sex afterwards, hoping for a better companion, and I found one. The unfortunate part was that I'm not bisexual. She was beautiful, elegant, kind-hearted, and smart. It was around this time that I was attacked by someone who had been abusing crack unbeknownst to me. I was beaten roughly 5 times in the face with a 2-liter glass bottle while pinned down by accident. My soon-to-be girlfriend was trying to protect me and ended up pinning my head down instead. My face was pulled out through her armpit, and the other side of my face found no comfort in the cold, hard, wintry ground. I remember reaching up to touch my face just to see my hands covered in black in the full moonlight after it was over. 8 police, someone dragged her off of me, and she proceeded to try and bite them. It was crazy. 8 police officers showed up to arrest her, yet I heard she wasn't even cuffed. They cuff people who are going in for mental health evaluations, and they didn't cuff someone who had just committed a crime of violence with a deadly weapon. She got out the next morning on $850 bail and went home. There was no justice for me, I felt. The world came crashing down upon me, all around me at this time, as if it hadn't before, but this time I felt it deeply. I remember going to the supermarket with a black eye. I told a local girl what happened when she asked about the situation. I was met with ridicule. She had gone back in and told all the people who worked there about my situation and laughed at me. They discussed throwing me out if I ever came back. I had to hear it from other people, and this was one of the first times I would become people's topic of conversation around town. I would later find out people discussed me looking for victims and using makeup to give the illusion of a beating, lying about it to sue someone when I never said such a thing in my life. The truth is, I only went to the bar one time with my ex-girlfriend, and that was for a friend's wake. People said that they had overheard me laughing about it at the bar with her, and I didn't go to the bar except that one time, and I was in mourning, nor drunk the entire time I was with my girlfriend. This is exactly what gang stalking is. Normal people have some sense of loyalty to someone they know in a situation like that, unless they're just pretending they care, which is a manipulative trait. I believe to some extent humans are vampiric. Their DNA is reptilian mammalian, and the reptilian is vampiric. Most people are energy vampires. The government has everyone programmed in a way in which people will talk against you at work or in a small town setting. You've been set up, and streams of consciousness are implanted in people to manufacture rumors and such to make you look bad. There can even be false memories implanted into people's brains in order to reinforce the belief. The point is to deteriorate your social life so that all people around you look down upon you. That, and it is meant to make you look crazy so that everyone thinks you're crazy. It's absolutely vile, but has happened to many people who I've talked to and who are targeted individuals. The pawns in this game of chess don't even know that they themselves are being played. It was mostly like psychics and like empaths and stuff that they targeted. The people most likely to like break out of the Matrix. I spent the next few years of my life just coloring pictures for my mother in mother's scrapbooks. I was so emotionally exhausted, I just hid away from everyone. I didn't even date at all. I took my pain medication and it numbed me to all things I had experienced. It was the easiest way to cope, and I was finally at the point where I was going through things by myself. My family was here, but I didn't lean on them as much as I could have. I just kept quiet and colored. I had fallen into a deep depression and didn't leave the house for years. That's when I spotted him online. Chapter 7. Lucifer was in a body that was strong, muscular, and swarthy. His name was Brock, and he beckoned me. I knew there was something about him right away, and I began talking to him off a dating app. All these dating apps are meant to degrade love, focusing on dopamine in the brain, and encourage casual relationships. All apps have a direct connection to our dopamine receptors. Humans have traded real likes and love for numbers for numbers game from the push of a button. I ended up in his town shortly after meeting him. When I was there, the road seemed to switch direction the entire time as if to keep me away. It took about an hour for me to get to his penthouse, even though it should have only been about 10 minutes from where I was. I kept missing the street as if it wasn't even there. I felt drawn to him immediately. I shadowed him like a little puppy dog in the beginning. His avatar had been in prison and he had learned stockbroking there. He was a self-admitted career criminal, and shortly after meeting me, he tried to get my tax ID number. When I told him no, he basically told me to fuck off. Instead, I tried to make him laugh. I had lost my keys during one of my first visits to him. It was this particular one. My father had to come and bring me a second set. I remember he was a bit peeved at me, so I hopped in my car and began to drive home. I had a massive whiteout while I was on the parkway on my way home. I woke up on the side of the road and whipped the wheel into oncoming traffic. I did a full 360 turn in the middle of the 3-lane highway and went directly into the guard wire. It stopped just short of my windshield. I was terrified. A trucker stopped to put up flares, but he was gone as quickly as he was there. We got a Trotuck to take the car, and I rode home with my dad. This was the first time they tried to kill me in this fashion, but it wouldn't be the last. I went into a strange state after I met Brock this time. I started speaking in a European accent. I just didn't want to be myself anymore, and I could hear him, like, literally in my, like, I could hear him, like, watching me, like, I could feel him watching me. I just wanted to be someone else. I went to my doctor's office and asked him to help me. This was my first mistake. He asked if I wanted him to phone my family, and I said yes, tell them I need more help. Because at that point, I was having trouble doing just about everything. And like I said, unless it had to do with a guy, like my energy levels, everything was so low. I was like basically in possessions unless it had to do with, some kind of male encounter. At that point, I was having trouble doing everything. I was in lots of pain, and maybe I was crying out emotionally for help as I hadn't talked to my family much in over a year. I was promptly taken to a mental facility under the directive of my doctor. I yelled at my father in the ER over an issue that had happened years before. I was irate and couldn't control myself, and I boiled over. Lucifer might have been working through me, and I didn't even know it. I ended up crumpled on the floor, crying into my father's hands before he left. I felt like life was a cosmic joke. I even wrote a comedic sketch about it on paper that night. One of the people working at the hospital began screaming and yelling about how I had treated my father. He started cursing at me, calling me a fucking bitch and banging on my door, and then began crying hysterically. Shortly thereafter, the nurses sent me upstairs to get my redemption, as they put it, and told me I was going home in the morning. I was given Valium and sent to bed. I was then woken up to go out into the hallway and claim my reward. They had a poster board with a charity on it. I had cried about not ever being able to go to Jamaica again. They had 3 countries that were on a fundraiser called Life's a Bicycle, Ride It. I completely shut down. I had just wanted a simple apology, someone to admit wrongdoing, and I would have just been fine. They sent me back to my room and I had a vision. There was a phone line for my GoFundMe, and the amount of money I was going to get went up and up. It hit $400,000 and then it collapsed. I saw my family crying as if someone had died, and then I saw myself in a sort of bubble tank in a mental institution. I put my hand up to the glass and said one word, a name. The name of the archangel that was to come to me in the future. They ended up keeping me. My assumption is that a GoFundMe was cheaper than being sued, and if I didn't take it, they would be held liable for what I imagine is harassment in a mental health setting, which looks bad for everyone there. I don't know why I was so offended, possibly because they were just offering me something monetary instead of something heartfelt. I believe they were just giving me a fundraiser for me to keep my mouth shut. They never mentioned it again, and when I called to tell the hospital about what had happened, they asked me if I was manic, and they asked if they should call my father. I never thought that meeting Brock had opened up the doors to a spiritual awakening, and the reason I had been speaking in the accent was evidence of one of my past lives. Once I got out, I had to go see a psychiatrist in order to deem me not psychotic before my doctor would give me my medication again. I went to her after I stopped taking the medication from the hospital, and she wrote a letter that stated I wasn't psychotic, even though at the hospital I was deemed schizophrenic. I don't know if it was because I didn't talk to the doctors about anything or what, but because of these hospitalizations, the existing files, I would be deemed schizophrenic in future hospitalizations. Shortly after, I rented a car and went to go see Brock. I slept in my car. I had this feeling of needing to run away for a while and into his arms. It was meant to be that way. He invited me up to his penthouse to look at it, and he told me he wanted me to decorate it. He told the people at the front desk I was his interior designer. He didn't allow me to stay there. He had only had a deflating air mattress anyway. I thought he didn't want the people who ran the building to see people in and out right away. The truth was, his apartment wasn't even in his name. It was in Mr. Price's name, and so was his car. He told me I needed to lose weight, and I lost about 15 pounds in a short period of time. I remember how mad he became at me when I had a burst of energy. I always thought I suffered from ADHD and never knew what to do with myself. If I wasn't so sick all the time, I would always be on the go. He freaked out on me, and to calm him down, I gave him a massage that I imagine felt like the trickling of rain on his body. He wanted me to stay, but I was so startled at how angry he became so quickly, I decided to go out instead. The first time I saw something awry was when he took me to hang out at Mr. Price's luxury apartment. I accidentally walked by the old man's room where he was sleeping and saw what looked like a horror movie version of someone getting their soul sucked out of them. It was very skeleton key, as he couldn't speak, emote, or even really move on his own. He required round-the-clock care, and I didn't think anything of it at first. I just thought he was old. The name was uncanny. There was a price to pay for some spending time with Brock, and the price was not in material things. I took my father's advice and stayed far away from Brock physically after that, but talked to him on the phone regularly. He had wanted to hear stories about me with other men constantly, so I made them up. I had never been in a three-way with two men, which was his fantasy, and he enjoyed hearing detailed stories every night. I can't even remember if he masturbated to them. Sometimes I'm sure he did, otherwise there would be no reason for them. He wanted me to go out and be with other men as well. I wasn't terribly promiscuous before this, but started sleeping with people a little more regularly. They would find someone shortly after talking to me, and that's how much it went with how pretty much how it went with everybody. I imagine most people probably sleep with lots of people when faced with Lucifer. He uses sex magic and does spells to make you do what he wants. I imagine that he is able to jump bodies as well to experience the sex through other people. Chapter 8. The archangel that was sent to me to break the bond and protect me, the prefix to his address was 111, the angel number of realization. He was handsome and kind to me, and I took to him immediately. His family was mafia, and he exposed this to me early on, for we were only together a month before I started having spiritual experiences. His mother didn't like me, and I knew that. His family seemed to reiterate things to me as if they knew things about me without me telling them. After the archangel told me his family was mafia, that he had a nest egg waiting for him of $400,000, just like the vision I had in the hospital. I mentioned possibly having a family, and he got really excited, as did I. That night I had a dream that Brock came to me the night before the wedding to rape me. He dragged me into a hotel room as he was invited to the wedding and forced himself on me. I woke up the next day in an altered state. I was scared of him, but texted him that I loved him for some reason, as if someone else was controlling my actions. The Archangel's sister's boyfriend mentioned the white lighter theory to me while I was there. It was a warning. There are a number of celebrities that were found with a white lighter, and the white lighter theory alludes to their death being assassinations, thus why white lighters are thought of to be bad luck. It has to do with the 27 Club, a group of artists that were sacrificed at the age of 27. Jimi Hendrix was dating a Russian oligarch's daughter, and she had been giving him some sort of narcotic sleeping pill. He died of an overdose and found with a white lighter in his pocket. Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain were also found with white lighters in their pocket and were 27-year-olds when they met their demise. I think Marilyn Monroe might have been part of the white lighter theory too, but I'm not sure. I started going into hypnotic state when I was there and wandering around their house. I ended up in his mother's room, who had cancer multiple times while she was sleeping with her daughter. I would wake up standing in the middle of her room watching her while she slept. They put out a camera at one point and got footage of me wandering into the kitchen and were watching it when I woke up one day. I would even wander outside sometimes and come to while I was doing it. The entire time I was there was part of an awakening process. I even told his mother I didn't think I would make it to 34 years old, but here I was, a ripe 33 years of age, the same age as Jesus was when they supposedly crucified him, or should I say the same age as Mary Magdalene when they crucified her. I would wander out in their dining room to pet the cats at night when I couldn't sleep. I ended up looking at the mail and seeing that the mother's last name was different than the father's and the children. I wondered if they did business through her name as not to be traced back to the father. Behind every man is an even stronger woman, and it made sense. One of the last times I was with his family was during a Father's Day brunch where his uncle, he was like his uncle, admitted to me that his favorite weapon was a bat. I didn't feel in danger at the time until the day his mother's best friend came to visit me. She had since passed, but her name was Mo. I woke up with her in my body, searching for her son. I was up on the bed, frantic, screaming, "Where's Tom? Where's Tom?" Her husband was the uncle and had placed their child in a home as he had Down syndrome, and he found the situation difficult. She had used me as a kind of conduit of sorts, and I woke up shouting for her child. Upon being dropped off at my house, I walked away from it as if I didn't even live there, which was very weird. I went to a doctor's appointment with his mother and sister one day and was passing out the whole time. I told them what kind of medicine I was on, and the mother already thought I was an addict. In fact, I had run out of medication within 2 weeks, trying to be perfect for everyone and pain-free, and had been going through withdrawals. I began to go into a trance-like state and was unable to form full sentences. After this, I wasn't allowed to stay at the Archangel's house. This was the beginning of the end with the Archangel. I still had the distinct feeling I was being watched. His sister had mentioned a keylogger to me at one point and asked me if I was sending a picture to someone else was cheating. I had incidentally sent a normal photo to Brock the day before. I still talked to him as I thought of him as my friend at the time, but had to mull the question around because of our past. I believe they may have put a remote keylogger on my phone instead of the sister's boyfriend, as discussed. They may have been monitoring their son for drug use as well, because when I mentioned getting raped, his mother mentioned STDs, and the first thing she said was herpes, and elongated it as she held direct eye contact with me while saying it. Once I wasn't going back to his home and had him at mine, I heard his family outside my house talking about killing me. I wasn't the desired person for him, and I knew that, for he had been in trouble with drugs, heroin, and I was taking oxy. I still didn't know if it was really his family outside my house, where I imagined they had better things to do, his mother having cancer and wanting to spend time with her daughter, but I heard them. It may have been for me to read into the future of what was going to happen to me had I stayed. I would later find out about V2K. You can't tell what is real and what is the government, and it usually renders people with a schizophrenia diagnosis hearing voices and such. I checked myself into a hospital, and I thought it was the right thing to do until I realized the mafia ran in hospitals. The Illuminati families going up to the papal bloodlines, the royals, all the way up to Orsini, owned the hospitals. I had begun to spun out. I was text messaging like a bunch of times. I was being puppeteered in some way. The Illuminati families go up to the papal bloodlines, the royals, all the way up to Orsini, own the hospitals. You could hear whatever they want you to hear, and I had visions of hitmen thereafter, especially at the hospital. It's possibly the Merovingans that run the hospitals, maybe. I can't remember. I looked them all up and figured out who was who, at one point. At the hospital, I was hearing his mother and his sister there talking about killing me and all sorts of other streams of consciousness that weren't my own, upon being admitted exactly as I heard them outside my house. I'd even told the social worker I was telepathic, and it just so happens I am. Mental health facilities have a way of guiding you away from the spiritual completely and making a scientific explanation for it. Did you know that Sigmund Freud was a morphine addict before he became a cocaine addict? He actually coined the Oedipus complex, I believe, for the powers to feel better for wanting to have sex with their mother, who happens to be me. The Oedipus complex is a Freudian term that was named after a man that unknowingly killed his father and slept with his mother. Freud said that a boy fears his father to be a rival at the same time as developing an unconscious infatuation with his mother. Illuminati appointed, and these are the kinds of people who we're taking psychology notes from. I am the mother and the father as the great creator, which would mean some of my children would have developed relationships with me where they both want to kill me and have sex with me. Upon checking in, I was placed in a room with someone who punched me as hard as she could when I changed in front of her. I was transferred to a protected ward. There were a bunch of signs the minute I checked in. The strange part, there were far too many people on the ward. They didn't have enough rooms for the amount of people that I saw on the ward the first night. I wrote down the information about the mafia coming after me, and I thought there was ricin in the water, as I had watched some of Breaking Bad with the Archangel's mother and sister. There was a guy there that they called Batman there, and the Archangel's cat was named Batman. He believed me when I told him the mafia was after me and that someone had infiltrated the hospital and poisoned the water. Strangely enough, they took the water that they had for patients and put it back behind the desk after my claims, which only reinforced my belief, and I didn't drink the water almost the entire time I was there. I stopped taking Oxy at the hospital as I was having visions it was poisoned. I switched medications as much as I could because I was under the impression that they were poisoned. I wouldn't eat the food because I thought it was poisoned. A man called me a red herring at the hospital one day, and I gave him my food to eat, as he had asked me if I was eating it. He ended up in the ER that day afterwards and didn't make it back up. Nothing is a coincidence. I would later find out that they could poison anything using witchcraft. The hospital didn't have to have anything to do with it, and they could have been the soul's consciousnesses I was hearing that wanted to kill me, as I eventually came to find out that I hear the subconscious of people. Or their souls. I can hear souls. It's universal consciousness. The girl they put me in a room there with stole my clothes. I didn't tell anybody, but I had asked her if she was paid to be there, and she responded yes. At one point, she broke down and told me everyone there was making fun of her, and I was the only one who was nice to her, and she apologized. The spirits were working through people. I had a dream that the characters from Bad Blood, which I had watched at the Archangel's house, were rolling my body off a boat. Their family incidentally had many boats. There were parallels everywhere, pointing to the conclusion that their family would have been tasked with my demise had I not left, even if they didn't know it yet. One night, 6 spirits visited me and were flipping around the extra bed in my room as if they were attendants changing the sheets, but there were far too many of them, and it was in the middle of the night, and it was pitch black in the room. They danced around the mattress for at least an hour, flipping it back and forth, back and forth. I had a hardcover of Dumbo I was going to read, but the nurses took it away and gave me a copy of a love story. The main character was described and took a likeness to me, and the angel of death was in it, the Duke of Ardsley. Ardsley was where I lived in Westchester. Everything I read there rang familiar, and I was incredibly cautious. I felt hunted. One of the nurses even had a triangle tattooed on her arm and told me it would be best to keep my head down while I was there. I saw tunnels underneath the hospital with my third eye where the hospital was keeping people for organ exchange. Hospitals are in on the organ trade and blood trade as well. There are stocks for the sale and trade of your voluntarily given blood and organs through the hospital. The sale and trade of your generous donations. One of the patients had a diamond tattooed on him, exactly like a shirt I gave to the Archangel. Everywhere I turned, there was something that related back to me, and I still wasn't eating or drinking anything. I lost 18 pounds in 3 weeks while I was there before I began eating and had a urinary tract infection that hadn't been treated. Whenever I was sick with a urinary tract infection, I tended to end up in the hospital. It wasn't every time I was sick with a urinary tract infection, but like usually around the time that I had some kind of infection, something would happen. I would have like an infection at the same time. I was more and more susceptible to possessions in a weakened state, and my third eye was open wider. I was watching television one day when Brock started appearing on the captions. The newscaster's name was Brock. The name streamed across the bottom of the screen repeatedly. And the name of a movie had Brock in it. Oops, sorry. I lost my place. A nurse had come up to me and reiterated a story word for word. What happened to me, I'm not joining. Word for word, what had happened to me in the Connecticut, where he lived one day when my car died in a diner parking lot. It was the diner Brock had started a fight with the police outside of, and the reason I had gone there to begin with was to help him with some legal paperwork to get him out of it. They kept me there for 5 weeks, and when I questioned my imprisonment, they told me I was involuntary. I admitted myself, so I was actually voluntary. The social worker there stole my number and later called me to tell me the place was shady and only kept me that long because I had insurance coverage and that I was a bipolar diagnosis and not schizophrenic. In fact, on the paperwork, bipolar was crossed out and schizophrenic was written in with pen. I told him this time that I was schizophrenic and something about being suicidal, even though I wasn't suicidal at all, nor was I schizophrenic. It was forced out of my body, forced speech. I might as well have been a fucking Muppet. I had told her about the Archangel's family and what I'd heard. She believed me. It was the first time I'd really talked to the social worker a lot in a hospital setting, as I only had checked myself in prior when I ran out of pain medication, knowing they would give it to me there. I never knew what kind of trail it could leave for me, nor did I care at the time. I was in pain all the time and desired relief, and hadn't cared how I got it. This happened once in a while because I just couldn't take the pain anymore. I never went to the streets for drugs, as I didn't have the energy for that kind of endeavor, and I wasn't getting high. I was getting relief. As a child, I never saw things in the darkness, just knew they were there. I would wake up staring into the abyss, knowing something was staring back at me, but I would see nothing. I had never heard voices before of any kind. I remember having streams of consciousness in my head, though. I used to play with my stuffed animals and talk to them. Sometimes I would engage in sexual relations with my stuffed animals, like stimulated. I would talk to them as if that's what was going on. And they would talk back to me. They would respond to me telepathically and wanted me to play and touch myself. I knew that stuffed animals aren't alive, so was it the bacteria, being that I have universal consciousness, or was it a program more sinister than you could ever imagine? Was I born into a slave program where the rich pedophiles of the world got to play with me too? I wonder, because sometimes I would end up role-playing with my stuffed animals, and then started around about 5. I would imagine they were people from the TV making love to me, and the streams that talked back to me always initiated a sexual encounter. All humans are on the brink of opening themselves up to telepathic capabilities, but they don't, as they are too busy with a work, eat, and sleep routine, as it may take up the entirety of one's life in most instances. People are just making it, trying to survive in a capitalist society. They don't seem to have time for the paranormal nor the spiritual aspects of things. And that is done on purpose by the people in charge. Time is currency and more precious than money, but if you implement a monetary system, the masses will easily think that money is more important than time. Advertisements and media tell you so. Social media is a look at what I've got mentality, and is meant to make people envious and wish they had a lavish lifestyle. It is meant to make people jealous of each other, and it's mostly about stuff. Once in a while it's about experiences, but it is all based in materialism. All I know is that the chances that a pedophile was on the other end using synthetic telepathy when I would engage in masturbation is pretty high, with all that I know now. And also, I figured out later that I could hear demons and angels, so that comes later in the book, and I will be back with the next installment soon. Thank you.